Now, exactly 1 year ago, I vividly remember everyone calling foldables a gimmick. Too expensive, too fragile, and just too niche. And overall, they were just seen as a cool idea that would never go mainstream. And honestly, year after year with Samsung straight putting out the same phone, I was starting to believe that too. Then, Samsung decided to start getting serious again and dropped the Galaxy Z Fold 7, a phone that didn't fade away after the hype cycle ended. It didn't start to feel like a compromise. It didn't become one of those phones that you admire but you actually don't want to live with. 6 months later, I think it's safe to say that this thing is holding up shockingly well. And that's when it hit me. Samsung didn't really need to be ambitious anymore. They didn't need to make foldable phones turn into this revolution. They just needed to make the Galaxy Z Fold series feel normal. Because Samsung didn't just win the foldable race this year. They made the Fold 7 light enough, thin enough, and comfortable enough that anyone could realistically use this phone every single day. Not tech YouTuber daily, not early adopter daily, just daily. You've got a front display that finally feels like a real phone, an inner display that feels incredible when you open it up, software that actually understands what a foldable phone is supposed to be, a phone that feels reassuring in the hand, and durability that 6 months in has completely changed how careful I am with it. And this is the first time a foldable hasn't felt like the future. It honestly felt like the present. And yeah, price is still the one thing holding it back from going fully mainstream, but if this is the direction that foldables are going, if this is the baseline moving forward, then I'd say that this isn't a gimmick category anymore. This is the start of foldables becoming normal phones that just happen to fold. So the real question isn't, is the Galaxy Z Fold 7 good? It's this: after 6 months of real-life use, does it actually prove that foldables belong in mainstream tech? Now, first off, let me clear something. No device is perfect. And even though I genuinely believe that the Galaxy Z Fold 7 is headed in the right direction, after 6 months since its release, there are some things that still bug me that I think they're worth talking about, especially at this price point. Now, the first one, and this might be my biggest frustration, is that some apps still don't look as good as they should on a screen like this. Now, I want to enjoy the massive display to its fullest, and I think you guys would agree with me that that's the whole point of owning a foldable. But then you open Instagram and there are these huge chunks of unused space just sitting there. Or you're watching a video and you've got thick black bars on the top and bottom of the screen, and it immediately kills the immersion. And for a phone that literally folds into a tablet, that kind of wasted space just feels wrong. Second, the speakers. Now, they're not terrible, but for a phone that cost over $2,000, I'd honestly say that they're pretty weak. And this is another thing that breaks the big screen illusion. You open it up expecting this cinematic experience, and the volume just isn't there. And I think that when you have $1,000 slab phones that sound louder and fuller, it's hard not to feel like something's missing here. And another problem that I dealt with was the telephoto camera. Now, the main camera is better, no complaints there, but zoomed-in shots, they just don't match the price that you're paying. Photos can look soft and inconsistent and honestly disappointing for a phone that's positioned this high-end. And at this level, there shouldn't be another weak camera in this lineup. And I feel like camera has always been a complaint with the Z Fold series as a whole. Now, another problem that I encountered was the screen reflections. That inner display plastic layer makes the screen feel very reflective, and once you see it, it's kind of hard to ignore it. It's very noticeable indoors and even more outdoors. And weirdly enough, the outer screen reflects a lot too. It doesn't ruin the phone, but it definitely pulls you out of the experience sometimes. And the final problem that I dealt with that pretty much annoyed me a lot was the battery life. At first it was fine. Not amazing, but fine. And I'd say that 6 months later, yeah, it kinda sucks now. I personally think it comes down to two things: the slim build and the battery size. See, when you're powering two displays, especially one that's this big, that trade-off starts to show over time. I find myself thinking about charging way more than I want to, and that's not something that you should be worried about on a phone like this. So yeah, this phone is moving foldables forward, but it's not flawless whatsoever. And those flaws do matter, especially when you're paying this much money. And the real question is whether the experience overall is still worth it. Most phones tell you their whole story on day one. You unbox them, set them up, and honestly, 6 months later, they feel pretty much the same. And I think that it's safe to say that with the Fold 6, 7, and even the 5, foldable phones in general don't really work like that. They don't peak on day one. They usually do evolve. And in my opinion, that's why a 6 months later review matters way more for a phone like the Galaxy Z Fold 7 than it ever would for a normal slab phone. Because with foldables, the real questions don't show up in the first week. They show up when the novelty fades. And questions pop up. That crease that you barely noticed at launch, does it get worse? That hinge that you were gentle with at first, does it still feel solid? That big screen that you unfolded for everything, do you still use it the same way? And that battery that felt fine early on, does it actually hold up once this phone becomes part of your routine? That's the stuff that you can't really answer on impressions videos. Foldables behave differently over time because they ask more from you as a user. They change your habits, change how you use apps, change when you charge, how to scroll, when to unfold and when you don't. And sometimes that change is amazing, other times it slowly becomes annoying. Now, one of the biggest compliments that I can give the Galaxy Z Fold 7 is that it doesn't feel like a fragile experiment anymore. And that's a huge deal for a foldable, because on day one, let's be honest, every foldable feels like you're holding something that you shouldn't breathe on too hard. But 6 months later, this feels like a phone that I can actually use. You put it in your pocket and you don't get that constant brick feeling. And you also don't feel like you're walking around with a mini tablet taped to your leg. It's lighter, it's slimmer, and that changed the whole relationship that you have with it. Because when a foldable is too heavy, you treat it like a special device. But with the Z Fold 7, when it's light enough, I treated it like it was my actual phone. My hinge still feels tight, not stiff, not loose, just consistent. And that matters because hinge feel is one of those that you really can't fake. A foldable either starts to feel wobbly and wear over time, or just stays confident. And this one still opens and closes with that smooth, deliberate motion that makes you really trust it. Pocket wear-wise, it's been normal. You're going to get little micro marks on the frame if you're using it like an actual phone. Keys, pocket, setting it down, all that. But nothing that makes it feel like it's falling apart. And what's crazy is around month 2, I stopped thinking about durability altogether. And that's the real test. Because early on, you know how you're paranoid when you first buy a very expensive device. But later on, you either relax because it's earned your trust, or you stay stressed because it feels delicate. And I say that the Z Fold 7 has earned my trust. Now let's talk about the crease, because I know that's what everybody wants to know. 6 months later, the crease is still there, but it hasn't really gotten worse in that, oh no, it's collapsing kind of way. It's one of those things that's very visible when the screen is off, or when the light hits it at a certain angle. But when you're actually using the phone, watching something, reading, multitasking, it fades into the background, and that's where this phone feels different, because older foldables felt like the crease was still part of the experience, and this one feels like the crease is just a side effect. And if you guys want the quick nerd explanation for why it's holding up better, it comes down to how the screen folds. Now, the newer hinge design uses a more water drop fold shape instead of just bending the screen into a tighter, harsher crease. And when that fold is gentler, it spreads the stress out across a wider curve. So the less stress that you have in one spot basically equals out to less crease drama over time. And that's exactly how it feels using it. So overall, the Z Fold 7 feels like Samsung finally leaned into what people actually wanted, a foldable that doesn't feel like a prototype. Now, next up, I wanted to dive into something that nobody really tells you about foldables. If the cover screen sucks, the foldable fails. It doesn't matter how amazing the big screen is, if the front display feels compromised, you end up resenting the phone instead of enjoying it. And 6 months later, this is where the Z Fold 7 quietly wins. Because I don't unfold this phone nearly as much as people think. Most of my day, texting, scrolling, replying to emails, checking notifications,